when we start to talk about storytelling and case studies, what I'm going to ask you to do is not to say, here is a case study. I would like you to say, here's Bill and Mary, and could we just talk through the situation that they were in and what we actually went through and put into place. Now, of course, you would ask, Bill and Mary, are you okay if I share some of the things that we did behind the scenes to give you behind the scenes? Sounds like we're talking about invisibles behind the scenes that gave you a real competitive edge. And they'd say, yeah, absolutely. I'm totally cool with that. That's great. Great. So the strategy that sits behind this, and I coached this into a team in the US about 6 weeks ago, and they said, this has changed the way we present our case studies. So I think this is a simple one for you to implement, but it's like a quick win out of here. And the strategy, guys, is called SOS. Okay, so SOS quite simply is, what is the situation that this particular client was in? What is the outcome they're looking for, e.g. the goal of the goal? Nice. And what was the solution, the strategy, the recommendation that we put together? So solution, strategy, recommendation we put together. So it's interesting. When I was planning for today's meeting, I thought about a property we sold just recently. Best to always use a sold property, unless you're using a horror story. Horror story is one that didn't sell. Then you can by all means choose one that hasn't sold. But if you're using a positive case study, tend to use competitors' horror stories, not your own, just as a little tip on that one. So positive case study, you turn around and say, so here's the situation this particular client was in. Boom, 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 boom. They're wanting to achieve this. They're wanting to move. They wanted to upgrade. They wanted to get to a bigger property. So the situation and the outcome they're looking for is to get that done before this time frame, or they wanted the outcome to have cash in their pocket to be able to purchase their next property and not have to worry about bridging finance and the stress around all that. So here's the strategy that we went through. Now, VAK, visual, auditory, kinesthetic. The 5 senses are what we see, what we hear, what we feel and experience, what we smell, and what we taste. Now, smell and taste tend not to get into the real estate transaction unless it smells off. And I'll just say on that, there was a particular guy that I worked with. He was in the Sydney marketplace and he was a smoker. And look, I don't mind if you smoke or not. That's actually your decision. I mean, there's a bit of evidence that say that it might actually, reduce lifespan. It might take a few years out of your life. But what he would do, he'd have a cigarette on the way to a client meeting. Yeah, and some of you who are non-smokers are cringing as I say this. Then what he would do, he'd have one of those little Listerine, put it on the tongue, put it on the tongue. And then for whatever reason, he chose to wear Paco Rabanne aftershave. Now, Paco Rabanne is an evening kind of very, very yuck, sort of like multifaceted sort of environment was coming out. So what I'm saying is watch, smell, and taste really gets involved. We really lick something in the process of selling a property. So most of the time, it's going to be what we see, what we hear, and what we touch and feel. And why I say that it's really important is with a case study, if you talk me through a case study, it'll have a certain level of meaning. We covered this last week in terms of if you show me something, if you actually present something to me, particularly if you can show me the evidence. You might show me the bidding sequence of an auction. You could talk about the great price you received, but I didn't see the bidding sequence. And by the way, on the bidding sequence, you might have beside of it, this one came from a realty online click-through. This one came from a realestate.com. This one came from a referral from another team member. This one came from our database. This one came from someone driving past and seeing the signboard. So you can see all of these kind of marketing activities that are working with this. And by the way, here's the marketing program that we put together for this particular client. So you're actually going through and talking through those components in a storytelling way. And at the end of the story, and obviously it needs to be a relevant case study, something relevant for this particular client, you're then in a perfect position to say, how would something like that work for you? And they turn around and say, that would be great. And because you've done it in a storytelling way, guarantee it improves how it resonates for them. They understand it more so. Now, go and grab a couple of kids' story books, or those of you with kids know when you're reading kids' stories, you read them in monotone mode. it's not going to have much meaning. You got to read them in terms of exciting. The big red dragon, say the big red dragon. So this is your tonality, this is your voice coming through, and it's in your belief transfer. And a very small percentage of the meaning gets transferred from the words we use. It's the way we actually say them. So learn the words, forget the words, focus on the transfer of meaning. But if you actually roll, and once again, this is awesome from a case study point of view. I believe each week at your sales meeting, team meetings, it should be, hey, what are the case studies we can run through SOS, situation, outcome, and the strategy. And literally, guys, particularly if you're new, I would strongly recommend you get this case study drawn up, bullet points along these lines, that you've got one side you can show the client, you can flip it over and say, here are some of the stats as to what we actually achieved. I don't know what good numbers are at an open home. I don't know how many inquiries we should get on the web in the first 2 weeks of a campaign. I just don't know that because I'm not familiar with it. But you're the expert with this. So by sharing that with me, you can start to really build and elevate your position in my mind in the marketplace. Now, this might be, and look, in my listing critiques, guys, what I've seen happen is, and it's really surprising. I think a lot of agents say, oh yeah, I'd use a lot of case studies. And what I find is you're actually sharing a result. Did you see the property around the corner? Yeah, we got a really good price for that. That is not a case study, that's a result. Well done sharing the result. The case study is, how did you actually achieve that result? How did that happen? And then you can start to bring some of the invisible things from your value stack, right, into the storytelling of your case studies. Or, once again, Bill and Mary, I just want to walk you through what we actually did for Bill and Mary. And then all of a sudden, it becomes super, super valuable from a client's point of view. What does this mean? It means your strategy is wrapped into a story, as opposed to, let me show you the marketing we're recommending for your property. Let me show you, let's talk about this. You've actually talked about it from a storytelling point of view. By the way, guys, a little tool, I'd love you having your toolkit. It's coming into my mind right now. I'd love you to have the list of of 10 recent sellers, or in property management, 10 recent landlords that you've asked permission to be able to share their number with potential sellers. Now, you're not going to put it out on the web or wait on your Facebook page or something like that. But if you're sitting with someone, you can simply say, and this is the art of starting to create difference. Here is a list of either my last 10 or 10 recent sellers that I had the opportunity to represent in the sale of their property. Feel free to give any of them a call. Now, even the art of doing that, even if I don't, as a seller, call any of them, what have you demonstrated? You've demonstrated visibility. You've demonstrated you're willing to put yourself on the line. You're willing to have them check in whether what you're saying right now is valid based on client feedback. Now, the other thing you do, and this is a little bomb, you can say, by the way, all great agents have a list of their 10 most recent sales. So now another agent comes in and the client turns around and say, oh, can I have a list of, some of your recent sellers that you actually represented? And they go, confidential, 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 confidential. And then you suddenly recognize what's happened there is you've just actually put a hole in their strategy. Why? Because if they're not willing to disclose that, what are they actually hiding in what they're saying versus what they're actually going to experience and do in the process?